Hello aspirants, looking at current affairs for 7th March. I know there is a delay, it has been because I was traveling, but I'm back now and I'll cover up all the lag. The news items that are there for 7th of March, which we have to look at, are these 14. We'll look at them in detail. The first one, Babri case. Supreme Court questions discharge of Advani others. So this is regarding the Babri Masjid demolition case which took place on 6th December 1992. So in this, there are two specific cases which were registered, and the Supreme Court is presently questioning discharge of these leaders. L.K. Advani, Uma Bharti, Murli Manohar Joshi, these are all BJP prominent leaders who have their charges, conspiracy charges against them have been dropped. So how were these dropped? They were on technical grounds that the charges have been dropped right now. So an appeal was filed in the Supreme Court by CBI in 2011. And now this case is being picked up by the Supreme Court and it is hearing. So this is in the context of which it is in news. The whole background of it, if you look at it, in 1992, after this, there were two specific cases which were registered. So the cases were, they are given the names here. You can see crime number 197 and crime number 198. So crime number 197 is against lakhs of unknown car sevaks. So there was these car sevaks affiliated to RSS, Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, who were involved in this Babri Masjid demolition. So the case is against them. There are serious offences including robbery, dacoity, murder, endangering life or safety of others, deterring public servants from doing duty, promoting enmity between different religious groups. So these are the offences on which they would be prosecuted, and the charges they can be jailed up to 10 years. The second case which is there, case number 198, this is registered against 12 persons. So here the prominent personalities are involved. These were L.K. Advani, Murli Manohar Joshi, Uma Bharti and others. So the case against them is because they were present on the dais. So they were the ones who were giving speeches which provoked the car sevaks, which charged the car sevaks, and they then demolished the Babri Masjid. So they were present on the dais at Ram Katha Kunj when the masjid was being demolished. So they are accused of promoting enmity, making imputations and assertions prejudicial to national integration, and statements conducing to public mischief. So these are the charges against them, and they can be jailed up to 5 years. So these cases were being tried in two courts, Lucknow and Raebareli respectively. So the CBI took over these cases. So in crime number 197 in Lucknow was taken over by CBI. And later the crime number 198 was also taken over by CBI later. So this second case, when it was taken over, after that CBI filed a joint charge sheet on both the cases. So after this, the Allahabad High Court raised the question. The Lucknow bench of Allahabad High Court said that there is a technical error because when case number 198 was transferred to CBI, the High Court was not consulted. So since it was not consulted, they said this is a technical error. So that is why CBI was only looking at crime number 197 only. So later governments failed to act. The crime number 198 finally got detached and it was sent back to Raebareli. So it does not come to CBI, and CBI is not looking into that now. So that was the status, that on the technical error it was dropped, and after that it was not revived. So this crime number 197, the special court which is there is trying only this crime. So this is regarding the actual demolition, not about hatching of a conspiracy as such. So that is the status. So that is why presently the Supreme Court is questioning that how these conspiracy charges were dropped against these leaders. So they say that it is to be examined in detail, that only on technical grounds how can they be dropped and never revived all these years. So now Supreme Court is looking into that question, and we'll hear more on this when statements or judgments, interim orders come from the Supreme Court. Looking beyond this, or rather before this, the entire story from 1992 till date, present Supreme Court statement we have discussed. But before this, about the entire Babri Masjid demolition, why was it demolished? The background is here. So the dispute is regarding Babri Masjid in Ayodhya. So this was built and named after the first Mughal emperor of India, Babur. So this was in 1527, the mosque was built. Post-independence in 1949, the dispute emerged because Lord Ram's idols were found inside the mosque. So whether if it is to be believed, then they have been miraculously they have come up over there, or they had been placed as such. There is no clarity on that. It is claimed that it is a miracle that idols came up inside the mosque. So since then, a dispute started that this site became a disputed site, and VHP, Vishwa Hindu Parishad, spearheaded a movement to construct a temple at this site. So it is claimed that this site is the birthplace of Lord Ram. So Ayodhya is the birthplace of Lord Ram is known. Whether this particular site is a birthplace of Lord Ram been claimed. So that is again on that basis. Of course, there is no evidence for it as such. It has to be believed. So that is the point on which they say this masjid should be converted into a temple now. And of course, it is true that when Mughals came up in India, they converted temples into mosques. So this was done. Many temples in India were converted into mosques. Many mosques were built afresh too. It's not that all mosques which are present today are all converted temples. So it is again, there is no evidence whether Babri Masjid was a mosque established or whether it was a temple converted into a mosque. That is also, there's no clarity on that too. It may or may not be true. So these are the points. And 1992, this incident took place. That is what we discussed right now, 6 December 1992, that over 1 lakh car sevaks, they razed down the mosque, demolished the mosque, and riots took place all over India. And lots of people were killed in these riots because the masjid was demolished. So in 2002, again, the Hindu activists, these car sevaks, they were returning from Ayodhya. They were killed in Godhra, the Godhra train burning incident which took place. And after that Godhra incident, riots emerged in Gujarat. So that is the incident in which Narendra Modi is also accused. So the Prime Minister was accused then. Of course, he has been given a clean chit by the authorities now that he could not tackle these riots as the Chief Minister of Gujarat then. And of course, the police is also blamed that they did not take action against the rioters. So it was all a conspiracy over there too. So this riots in which again a huge number of population was killed is there. In 2009, Liberhan Commission was formed, and the report came on Babri Masjid demolition, and it blamed top BJP leaders including LK Advani for instigating activists to raze down the mosque. So the case which is there, case number 198, and presently conspiracy charges have been dropped. So this Liberhan Commission report accused them that they were the ones who instigated activists and they brought down the mosque. And in 2011, the Allahabad High Court had given a judgment. So that was suspended by Supreme Court. It gave a judgment that this site is a disputed site, so it should be divided equally between Hindu and Muslim groups. So this judgment has been suspended, and we'll look into what will be the Supreme Court's hearing will take place, and what the judgment Supreme Court gives is awaited now. Then the next news item is Pakistan blast. Pakistan-based groups were behind 2008 Mumbai attacks. So this is a statement which has been made by a former National Security Advisor of Pakistan, Mr. Durrani. So this Major General Durrani, he was sacked from the post of NSA because after Mumbai terror attacks in 2008, in 2009, he made a statement that action should be taken against those who are responsible for Mumbai attacks. So because of this statement, he was sacked. He was removed from the post of NSA in Pakistan. So means he agrees to presently that Mumbai terror attacks were done by the handiworks of a Pakistan-based group. But Pakistan Armed Forces was not involved. ISI was not involved. That is what his statement is. And this Jamaat-ud-Dawa chief, Hafiz Saeed, against whom we have been hearing that the Pakistan forces have been taking action now. He has been put under house arrest. Charges are imposed against him. So this Hafiz Saeed, India has repeatedly given proof that he had a role in Mumbai terror attacks. So again, this former National Security Advisor of Pakistan, Mr. Durrani, is saying that there is no incentive and there is no gain for Pakistan by protecting Hafiz Saeed. So why does it not take action against him is his question. So this is regarding that. And all these statements were made at a conference which was held. This was even the Defense Minister of India, Mr. Manohar Parrikar, made his statements here. So this is Asian Security Conference on Combating Terrorism. So Indian Defense Minister also said that terrorism was the single biggest threat to international peace and security. And he says that India has been continuously trying to have a global response against terrorism. India has also submitted a resolution at United Nations way back in 1996, that is Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism, CCIT. We have discussed this quite often too. So this is regarding CCIT, a draft proposed by India in 1996, and it has not yet been adopted by UN General Assembly. Why has it not been adopted? It's a convention on international terrorism. So the problem is that there is no clear definition of terrorism. So there are these ideas of good terrorists and bad terrorists. So terrorism in all forms have to be taken action against or has to come under one umbrella, but that is not agreed to. So there are some entities again which fight for independence and they take up arms. So whether that is terrorism or not is the question. The definition of terrorism, because even US soldiers, it says they have these international interventions done without US mandate. Then again, that may also come under the definition of terrorism if terrorism is defined in such a way. Then even the OIC, Organization of Islamic Countries, they also have this fear that this India-backed Convention on Terrorism will be used to target Pakistan. So this and the rights of these groups which are fighting for independence, like Palestine, Kashmir, they would be acted against. So these have also picked up groups which have picked up arms and they are fighting for the independence. So they would also come under the definition of terrorism. So that is why there is no unity and clarity that an acceptable, universally acceptable definition of what is terrorism. So that is the main aspect. So if once this terrorism is clearly defined and all forms of terrorism come under its umbrella, then all such groups have to be banned regardless of the country in which they are operating. The access to funds and getting safe havens in any country should be ensured does not take place, and then they would be prosecuted for all kinds of terrorist activities even within the country, cross border, and even all countries will have to amend their domestic laws so that they can make even cross border terror an extraditable offense. So extradition would take place, means the person who has committed an offense in a particular country and has now gone to another country, then extradition should be possible, means he should be brought back to the country where he committed the offense and prosecuted. So these are the provisions, but then since there is no clarity and no consensus, it has not yet been adopted by UN General Assembly. Then the next news item is meditation, Reiki at Yoga Week. So this is regarding yoga. The International Yoga Festival was a week-long festival which took place recently in Rishikesh, which is in Uttarakhand. It's called the unofficial capital of yoga in the world. So this is in news and it has become prominent because Prime Minister Narendra Modi and other personalities have been speaking on yoga quite often, and it has been emphasized and endorsed quite often. So there may be a question in mains also which may come up on yoga. So you have to get some idea on it too. So in this festival, two different types of yoga were endorsed. So this took place, and also statements given by Prime Minister Narendra Modi through a video conference on this International Yoga Festival. He said yoga could help combat climate change and terrorism. So in what context this is and how can you justify this statement? So he says that the world today is threatened by these twin challenges, terrorism and climate change. The world looks at India and yoga for a durable and sustainable answer to these problems. When we talk of global peace, there should be peace among nations. Only peaceful individuals can make peaceful families. So he says that yoga brings in peace, and when there is peace within an individual, then there is peace amongst families, and within families, amongst families, and amongst nations. So that's what he's endorsing, that this brings in peace. So when once there is peace, non-violence, then there will be no terrorism, and we'll be able to combat climate change also, is a statement which he makes. He says that yoga was the way to create such harmony and peace within individuals, families, societies, and nations. So once harmony comes in, so when you know how to live with nature, then we can also combat climate change with this. So these are the points which is made. Of course, if you're writing a long answer, you will need much more justification on this. So that is why this becomes important. Also here, the other classes which were undertaken during this International Yoga Festival week were on meditation, mudras, Sanskrit chanting, and also on Reiki. So what is this Reiki? It's a Japanese technique for stress reduction. So that was also up here. So that is to promote healing. So it says Reiki, it is done by laying on hands. So it is an idea that an unseen life force energy flows through all of us and it keeps us alive. So once this life force energy is high, means there will be happiness, health. If this life force energy goes low, then people feel sick, they feel stressed, and there are troubles. So this Reiki is a Japanese technique. So Re here means God's wisdom or higher power, and Ki means life force energy. So this is also a spiritual stress reduction relaxation technique of Japan. So this was also there along with yoga in this festival endorsed and undertaken. The next news item is law to regulate use of air conditioners. So this is a proposal coming from Union Environment Ministry that they are considering to bring in a notification. So after public consultation, this notification would be brought on by the government, which will define the operating parameters for air conditioners, which are used in commercial spaces, airports, offices, etc. So there should be law regulating this use of air conditioners. So they should be functioning at a preset temperature is what they are expecting, because it is seen that air conditioners are set up at very low temperatures irrespective of the outside temperature. So this results in cooling taking place, but then a lot of electricity is also used, and of course it contributes to climate change. So here also we know that the air conditioners use these chemicals, hydrochlorofluorocarbons, which are used here. So these refrigerant chemicals, they have to be phased out. So under Montreal Protocol 2, these have to be phased out by 2030. So steps needed to be taken on that aspect too, and also for climate change and reducing consumption of electricity, these regulations would be brought in. Even Japan, EU have such regulations. So in Japan, since 2005, there is this provision that all government departments and commercial establishments should have their air conditioners preset to 28 degrees. So summertime it should be 28 degrees, and employees should not wear these formal coats and everything. They can come in comfortable casuals. So this helps in maintaining air conditioner and ambient air temperature, and then you can have your electricity consumption saved too and contribute towards tackling climate change. So let's see what steps India would take on this. Then this is regarding the Montreal Protocol. So this was developed under the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, in 1987. It came into effect in 1989, and this is a protocol to the Vienna Convention. So this was the first of the global agreements to protect Earth's atmosphere. So this is regarding Montreal Protocol. So it's a Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. So these are ozone depleting substances. So they have to be phased out. So this treaty came into effect in 1989, and since then there have been many revisions also to it, because more chemicals have been brought in under it, so which are contributing towards ozone depletion. So ozone is important for us. We'll see about ozone also. So you can see ozone, it is present in the stratosphere. So in the Earth's atmosphere, in the stratosphere, we have this ozone layer which protects us from the harmful ultraviolet rays from the sun. So if ozone layer would not be there, UV rays would directly strike on, they absorb the UV rays. So if they are not there, ozone layer is not there, then absorption of UV rays would not take place, and they would come directly, and it may result into various kinds of skin diseases, also skin cancer. So that is why ozone layer is important for us, and this ozone in the stratosphere is important. Also, you should know that ozone also contributes to greenhouse, and it is the one which is emitted during emissions too, but that is in the lower atmosphere, the troposphere. So that ozone is not good for us. The ozone layer in the stratosphere is what is important. So that is there. And these chemicals, you can see chlorofluorocarbons, hydrochlorofluorocarbons, they contribute towards ozone depletion. So they deplete the ozone layer. So they have to be phased out. So this is the step which has been taken. Phasing out has to take place. 100% reduction by 2030 is what is targeted. So this is regarding the entire history of milestones achieved. What we have seen that ozone hole has been detected over Antarctica. So this was first reported in 1985. So how ozone hole has come up in Antarctica is a question too, because ozone depleting substances, they are emitted. Major emissions took place because they are generally used in refrigerants and coolants. air conditioners. So then they are generally used in developed countries. So maximum emissions are from developed countries, means American continent, European continent, the North America, Europe. So here if emissions are taking place, how is Antarctica developing an ozone hole above above its atmosphere, above the surface there? So this is because of the specific characteristics in this region. So this is regarding ozone in the atmosphere and the reason for Antarctic ozone hole. So you can see here the molecules of CFC, chlorofluorocarbon, they were invented for using in refrigeration and air conditioning, and they were used widely because they were not toxic. So CFC is not toxic, but then the other consequences which it has is that it depletes the ozone layer. So once that was found, then these steps had to be taken to reduce its emissions. So ozone layer, as we saw, it's important in the stratosphere. So this ozone layer is formed in the stratosphere, which protects us from the UV rays, but the ozone which is present in the troposphere, which comes out through emissions. So these surface ozone emissions from trucks, industrial pollution, this is bad because it can irritate the lungs as such too. So this is ozone. Ozone specifically, you should know, ozone is a 3 oxygen atom molecule. So it has 3 oxygen atoms, O3. O2 is oxygen, O3 is ozone. So it is made of oxygen only, but different from oxygen we breathe. So, and this is regarding the Antarctic hole, ozone hole in the Antarctica. So what are the causes for Antarctica, means near the South Pole? Here, why is an ozone hole found? So ozone, these ozone depleting substances are emitted by developed countries, used in coolants, refrigerants, air conditioners, means these are the countries which have major emissions and have had major emissions. This was found in the first detected in 1980s. So this ozone depleting substances are emitted, and since they cannot have any source back, means they stay in the atmosphere. They continue to stay in the atmosphere. They reach towards the upper layers. So from the atmosphere, you should know the layers of the atmosphere. You have the troposphere, above it you have the stratosphere. So ozone layer is present in the stratosphere here. So these ozone depleting substances also reach stratosphere, and because of the movement, air movement, all these go up to the poles. So that is how the air circulation also takes place. So they go to the poles, and in this region they accumulate. So here accumulation of these ozone depleting substances take place, and specifically we are concerned about chlorine. So this chlorine present here gets accumulated, and these polar stratospheric clouds are what is formed in the Antarctic regions, in the poles actually. So these polar stratospheric clouds, in both Arctic ozone hole has also recently been detected. So it's not that Arctic is safe. So this Antarctica, these are the coldest places on the earth amongst them. So here, you know, on the poles there's 6 months day and 6 months night. So during winters the temperatures are quite low. It's complete darkness for 24 hours. So in these very cold temperatures, these polar stratospheric clouds are formed, and when these clouds are formed, on top of them these chlorine molecules here also come in, these ozone depleting substances, and they, on the surface of these ice crystals, the chlorine here, which is unreactive, becomes reactive. So this is what happens. You can see these ice crystals, reactions occur on the surface of these polar stratospheric clouds, and they release chlorine, and this becomes reactive. So CFCs, chlorine is extremely destructive. So this one chlorine atom can destroy a number of ozone molecules. So they are tightly held in CFCs, but when they reach up the stratosphere and they reach on top of these polar stratospheric clouds, these bonds are released, and because of these cool temperatures only, actually these chlorine atoms become free. They start building up, and they continue accumulating, because even here the movement of air in this polar region too, there's a polar vortex which is formed. So there's no incoming and outgoing from here. So all things accumulate here. So these chlorine atoms also keep accumulating here, and when the sunlight comes now during springtime, so this finally, the energy from the sun is strong enough, and the chlorine atoms spark into a chain reaction. And this chain reaction, one chlorine atom can destroy thousands of ozone molecules. And this is the reason why this ozone hole has developed or built over the Antarctica, and also over the Arctic, which has recently been detected. So this is the whole story. So post these steps which have been taken under Montreal Protocol has resulted in success. So this ozone hole depletion has been checked and now ozone is building up again. Next news item is Supreme Court questions government on deposit of old notes. So here a bunch of petitions have come before the Supreme Court. They have been filed by companies and individuals, and they are questioning these provisions of specified banknote cessation of liabilities ordinance. So this ordinance was promulgated on 30th, not 13th, 30th December 2016. So this penalized all those who deposit money after demonetized money after 31st December 2016. So the petitioners are saying that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had promised when he announced demonetization that the cutoff date of 31st December would be extended to 31st March for those who are caught in genuine predicament and they are not able to deposit by 31st December. So this ordinance actually severely restricted the conditions in which it would be allowed, and there have been severe restrictions imposed. So that is why these petitioners are questioning, and the Supreme Court is asking the government why it went back on its promise that the date of deposit would be extended and now it has been restricted. So this is the ordinance. Recently we have also discussed in news a complete act, Cessation of Liabilities Act, has also been passed with the similar provisions. So the Supreme Court is hearing this case also. Then the next news item is Trump signs Muslim ban 2 order. So this is the name, it's not the official name given, but the executive order which President Donald Trump of USA has signed presently in March now is temporarily banning travel from 6 Muslim majority countries. So you should remember during the first order, executive order, 7 Muslim majority countries were targeted and no person from those countries can enter into US. Not even if they are green card holders, not even if they have a valid visa. So this was actually challenged in the judiciary in USA and it had to be cancelled. So now this new executive order is having safeguards here. It's not as restrictive as the first one. So if you have a valid visa, a person from these countries have a valid visa, are green card holders, then they will not be affected. Others would be affected. This is a 90-day ban, 3 months ban which has been put forth, and only 6 countries. The 7th one, which was there in the earlier order and not in this one, is Iraq. So with respect to Iraq, it says that here there have been steps taken. A preferential treatment here has been given for Iraq. So other 6 countries are either state sponsors of terrorism or have been significantly compromised by terrorist organizations, or contain active conflict zones. But with respect to Iraq, says this is a special case. Portions of Iraq remain combat zones, but the country's commitment to combating Islamic State justifies a different treatment. So Iraq has been excluded in this present list. So this is there. Also, last executive order, it also gave preferential treatment to Christian refugees. So they would be allowed to come in. So here that aspect has also been excluded because that also created a controversy. So this 90-day ban would be there and refugee program would be suspended for 120 days. So 3 months and 4 months ban this has been initiated. The next news item is North Korea fires 4 missiles. 3 reach Japanese waters. So 4 ballistic missiles were launched by North Korea, which is a nuclear armed country, and it was in reaction to the last week's joint military exercise, which is annually done of USA and Japan. So 3 of these ballistic missiles landed in Japan's EEZ, means exclusive economic zone. So that is the water body here, which is up to 200 nautical miles from the coast, or around 370 kilometers. So these ballistic missiles landed here. So even we know, we have discussed this in news, that North Korea is building intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, which can reach up to USA also. So even this is a reaction which has been given, and Donald Trump has also said that he will not allow North Korea to develop these nuclear weapons. So, but test firings have been taking place. You can see the North Korean missiles and their range. So this is North Korea here, Japan lies here, and Alaska in the northern hemisphere here. You can see US lies here, and Alaska, one of the states, is very close. So that is where it is targeting. Even Hawaiian Islands here in USA are here, up here. So the ICBM, which it is building, Taepodong 2, it's in development, under development, can reach up to USA. So nuclear missiles weapons are being built by North Korea. North Korea is declared a rogue state by USA, that it does not, it's actually a military ruled country. The military rulers here, the dictatorship you can say which is prevalent here, the human rights violations are there, of course. The economic or socio-economic indicators, if you look at it, they are very poor in cases of human rights, employment, standard of living, that is quite low. And they have been acting on getting concessions from USA. So USA has imposed restrictions on them, UN sanctions have been imposed on them, and they want aid from these countries, and they threaten them with nuclear weapons. So this is what North Korea's status is. It's, of course, it is close to China, so China has supported North Korea quite often, and of course it has criticized also, as recently we saw when the nuclear test was conducted, ballistic missile test was conducted, it criticized North Korea also. So it's a communist, claims to be a communist country, but not true communism exists there. Then the next news item is study highlights foreign students' role. So this is regarding UK, the foreign students coming to UK, the role played by them and the contribution they make to UK economy. So these international students, they study here, the fees which they pay and the other good services which they avail. This results in contribution to the economy to the tune of 25.8 billion pounds. So now presently the new policies which UK government has initiated, this is resulting in reduction of international students coming in. So there is no cap on the number of students who can come to UK. But there has been a reduction because there have been restrictions put on their ability to work after they finish their degree. So this number of visas, student visas which UK gives, and number of Indians who avail these visas is quite low. It says India has only 6% of student visas granted as of 2016 data shows. So there are international students from all over, not just India. India is a minor contribution here, and also it says that at least the latest figures, 2016 figures, show that because this reduction has taken place after the new policies came in and the fees being paid will go down, so it would affect the UK economy as well. So this is the article about that students, international students should not be restricted as such. But if you put restrictions on working post degree, then of course students coming in would also reduce. So that has been highlighted through this study which has been undertaken. So there are EU, non-EU country students who are coming in and they contribute a significant amount to fees which they pay also. Then the next news item is NIIF in talks with 2 sovereign funds. So this National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, NIIF, this was announced by the government in budget 2015-16, and presently the government has brought in its commitment. It had committed 20,000 crore to this fund, so that has been brought in. Another 20,000 crore has to come up from other sources. So it is in talks with sovereign wealth funds too. The sovereign means from national, so national wealth funds are also their sovereign wealth funds. So they would be investing in these NIIF, contributing to this NIIF too. So here 49% stake is expected to be of the government. So it will be a minority stake. Other sovereign wealth funds, pensions, insurance companies can also bring in amounts and bring in an equivalent stake. So that is what is expected. So this is a fund for funding infrastructure. So this is a major fund, an umbrella fund which will have various sections and funding those funds. So that is what is expected, that when the government is supporting a funding, then there is more chances of others coming in and chipping in too, and that will help in infrastructure development, accumulating fund for infrastructure. So that is the basis on which this fund has been initiated, NIIF. So under this there is NIIF Direct also. So this direct fund can be used directly to invest in existing or new infrastructure forms of projects. So that aspect can also be there. Also it says that it will back platform companies. So these platform companies means the initiation. So when you want to invest in particular sector, the platform companies means from here you start off, and then it would result into bringing in investment for larger projects and scaling it up. So such investments can also take place. So then it can later be scaled up and bigger projects can be initiated. So as you want for launching, you need a platform. So that way these are called platform companies. So you can see it has been set up as a trust. So it will raise debt to invest in the equity of infrastructure finance companies. So means this is the money which has been raised and be used to invest in equity. So infrastructure finance companies. So these are the funding agencies. These fund infrastructure and these will be funded by NIIF. So that's how the linkage is fund for the funds. So Indian Rail Finance Corporation is there, National Housing Bank is there. So these infrastructure finance companies would be getting support from this NIIF. So it will be boosting infrastructure. So this is what is the idea too. You can see here it's given 20,000 crore from government, 20,000 crore from other sources. So none of them have committed yet. But we are talking with various sovereign wealth funds too. From Qatar, UAE also we have been in talks of them contributing to NIIF. But we haven't got a positive response yet. So that is there. So SEBI has already approved NIIF as an alternative investment fund. So this is an investment fund. So multiplier effect means some fund provided and that resulting in more fund coming in because of national government supporting it, and then the investment for infrastructure gets a boost. Then the next news item is Center mulls modifying definition of startup. So the central government is considering proposals which have come forth to it that the definition of startup in the policy, Startup India policy, which has been initiated, has to change. Because under the Startup India policy, a startup means that one which has just been established not more than 5 years ago. So a recently established entity, its annual turnover, because it's a startup, starting up afresh, so its annual turnover should not exceed 25 crores in any preceding financial year. And finally, of course, this is important, it should work towards innovation, development, deployment or commercialization of new products, processes or services. So this is driven by technology or intellectual property. So that is called a startup. Third aspect, these are the three criteria. If it fulfills these, then it is defined as a startup and it gets benefits under Startup India policy. So presently, these startup companies are demanding a modification to this definition. The third aspect is fine. Third point is fine. For the first 2 points is where they are demanding changes, because they say that all startups cannot be treated in the same scale, because there are startups for biotechnology, medical devices. So they need more time to gather, take up as a financially active entity. Means they need more time to become viable. So means this 5-year time frame should not be there for them. It should be extended to 8 to 10 years or more too. So this is the recommendation here. Also the turnover aspect, they say that the number of employees should be rather used to define what is a startup rather than the turnover. So because there is investment required in plant machinery. So this is another suggestion which has been brought in, and the government says they are considering these suggestions so that the definition of startup can be modified and made more broad-based. So we'll wait and watch if there is a modification coming in. But presently, these are the 3 points which should be fulfilled by a startup company. Then the next news item is Center may unveil IIP WPI with a new base year. So this is Index for Industrial Production and Wholesale Price Index. So these two have a base year presently at 2004-5. So base year is an ideal year which is taken a normal year. So compared to that, further figures are brought forth. So present base year will be changed now to 2011-12. So even for GDP and other growth numbers too, base year has changed to 2000, has been proposed to change to 2011-12. So to bring in this compatibility for these figures also, for these indicators also, base year would be changed now. That has been proposed. The next news item is IT industry must stress mutual gains to the US. So this is NASSCOM, which is emphasizing that Indian IT industry should educate US policymakers that there are mutual benefits if there are strong India-US trade relations in IT services. Because many Indian IT companies have also established themselves there, and many US companies, they have these people from India and other countries coming in on H-1B visas and L-1 visas. So the government has proposed additional restrictions on these two. So this H-1B visa is for high-end professionals who come in and work in USA. So we have discussed that the salary figures for them have also been raised. So that will put in restrictions on those who can come on this H-1B visa. So only high-paid professionals would be able to come. That is there. And also another change which they have made is that the premium processing for H-1B visa applications, this has been temporarily suspended. So they say this premium processing has been suspended so that the backlog of H-1B visa petitions can be cleared. So they say that is the only thing for which we are doing. This is a temporary provision. This has been done earlier too, it says. So it says that this is premium processing, means within 15 days you will get your H1B visa. So for this you have to pay a premium fee. So this has been stopped now, because it says because of this premium processing which has been availed by many, the normal processing of H1B visa is not taking place, and that has resulted in a backlog which needs to be cleared now. So these, you can see, H1B visas are usually approved for 3 years. So there's a 3-year period given for which this H1B visa would be valid. But recently it has been seen that several petitions have been approved just for 1 year. So we can see restrictions are of course coming in from USA, and what further steps would be taken and how far it would affect India and also US economy consequently will also have to be wait and see. But NASSCOM is saying that this should be made understood to the US administration, that US economy also gets supported by it, as also benefited by the Indians coming in and working there. So that is regarding that. The next news item is polluted environment kills 1.7 million children a year. So this is a study coming from WHO, World Health Organization, which says that 1/4 of the global deaths of children under 5 are due to unhealthy or polluted environments. So dirty water, air, second-hand smoke, or lack of adequate hygiene is resulting in global deaths of children. So these polluted environments, the diseases which they face because of this are diarrhea, malaria, pneumonia, and finally it results in their deaths, because in young children immunity is also not so strong, so their organs are still developing, immune system is developing, and their airways here, they are especially vulnerable to dirty air and water. So this has come out in this World Health Organization report, which is Inheriting a Sustainable World, Atlas on Children's Health and the Environment. So it says that even harmful exposures can start in the womb itself, in the mother's womb, and then the children are continued to be exposed to this air pollution, secondhand smoke, and their risks to pneumonia increase, and they can have this lifelong risk of chronic respiratory diseases too. So this has been highlighted under this. You can see 1.7 million deaths of children under 5 are due to environment. Respiratory infections, pneumonia, diarrhea. You can see the number of deaths has been brought here. Neonatal conditions, premature births, unintentional injuries such as burns, drowning also results in deaths, and malaria. So these are the causes here. You can see number of deaths they are responsible for. So it says reducing environmental risk could prevent 1/4 of these deaths. The next it says children are affected by these air pollution, secondhand smoke, built environment, climate change, hazardous chemicals, UV rays, hazardous wastes, etc. Even new cases of even POPs, persistent organic pollutants, e-waste are affecting children. These are emerging threats now. So it says minimizing these risks are key to protecting children and achieving the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So you can say they can start in the womb itself and can have effects throughout their life. So this is specifically regarding air pollution, number of deaths caused due to them, and other causes also, other consequences of this air pollution on children also are shown. The last one is doctors ring warning bell against antibiotic resistance in children. So this is a research undertaken by AIIMS, and it has shown that antibiotic resistance is prevalent in children and is resulting in deaths. Nearly 26% of babies with sepsis died, it says, because of multiple drug resistance, and their treatment cannot be given to them because there is no drug for this. So even recently we had seen that World Health Organization had also emphasized that antibiotic resistance is a huge concern now, and there is a need for new drugs, new antibiotics to be developed, and this research is again being emphasized on, that there is decline in research too by AIIMS also, and it says that already the number of antibiotics, strong antibiotics which can be given to children is restricted, because not very strong antibiotics can be given. So there is restriction already, and now the drugs which are available, they are not useful, and it is resulting in deaths. It says even for common ailments like urinary tract infection too, antibiotic abuse results in children suffering, and eventually they cannot be treated. So this is the point, that antibiotic abuse should not be there. So antibiotic abuse means overuse or not using correctly. So antibiotics, when they are prescribed, first of all, prescriptions should be there only in cases where it is essential. So even one aspect is there on doctors also. So it says think before you ink. So these are some initiatives which have been taken up by IMA, Indian Medical Association. So think before you ink means before you write a prescription, you think whether it is required, whether these antibiotics are required. Zarurat bhi hai kya? So that way. 3A's means avoid antibiotic abuse campaign. These have been initiated. Use wisely, not widely. Because when you use antibiotics, then in your body, antibiotic resistance also develops. So we have seen earlier too that there are bacteria on which these antibiotics work and they are killed, but there are some who are resistant and then they multiply. So this antibiotic resistance has developed, and second time when you use this, and these antibiotic resistant bacteria can transfer this resistance to others also. So that is also possible for bacteria. So that's why later this same antibiotic may not work for the child or work for any human, and then multiple drug resistance. So second line of drugs is given, even that does not work later, third line. So that's why there should be restriction on their use. Only in cases where it is essential it should be used, otherwise its use should be avoided. So that is what is being emphasized on. Also over prescription and self prescription should not be there. So that is also highlighted. Means when, as long as it is required, it should be taken. There is a particular course, a dose required, as the amount of medicine which has to be taken, prescribed, has to be taken in that dose only, that frequently only, and that time frame. If you leave it earlier, then again it is not beneficial and the bacteria develop resistance to them. So that's why underdose, overdose, not completing the course are all wrong steps which are taken, and there is a need to educate the people and the doctors too. Patients and doctors both have to be educated on this, that right use of antibiotics takes place and antibiotic resistance surge which is there, this scourge can be ended. Means this should not be a concern anymore. And of course presently we are already in a phase where antibiotic resistance has developed. So then as a response to this, we need more drugs, more research and new drugs being developed to tackle this antibiotic resistance. So this was put forth by World Health Organization too, that we are fast running out of treatment options now, and there's a need for priority being put up on developing new medications for this. So it gave 3 categories of critical, high and medium priority antibiotic resistance pathogens. So this catalog of 12 families of bacteria was put forth. We have already discussed few days back in news regarding this. So this is regarding it. So these are the news items. Thank you.